Hello, everyone. Shreya, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, excellent. Welcome to this session on maturity models, which is used to analyze the performance of supply chains. Now, this is the last technical session in CLC2. I mean, I don't know. I thought we started yesterday, but it's already been about 5 weeks. So really appreciate everyone's patience and hard work in completing the course. Now, this course is organized jointly with the Association of Industrial Pharmacists of Nigeria, IUPHL Nigeria chapter, and B-Skill. Today, we also have our guest speaker with us, Mr. Ogbuche Odo, and I see Dr. Okafor has also joined. She's she also she also wants to learn, I believe, Dr. Okafor. Your zeal for learning never ends, which is great to for which is also great learning for everyone in this session as well. So great to see you as well. So
Thank you.
today Thank you so much. So today, what we're going to do is we are going to look at two different maturity models. One is from the Association of Supply Chain Management, ASCM, Global Health Supply Chain Maturity Model, which was initially developed by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation with their funding. In fact, I used this maturity model in Nigeria, in Ethiopia, when I was working at Prime Industrial Associates, and the results were very good. And we could assess very quickly, in a couple of days' time, we could do a basic analysis of the status of any state or a country level supply chain. So we will study that. And we will also look at the UNICEF maturity model. The concepts are all the same, but the way of organizing a maturity model is different. Now, why we are doing this? So I will answer this question first, and then I will hand it over to Ogvuche, who will take us through the core sections, and then I will be back to organize some of the activities we have. So why we are doing this? You see, in this course in CLC2, we are learning the enablers of supply chain. Now, in CLC1, we learned the core functions like selecting products, forecasting, supply planning, procurement, warehousing, distribution. We learned all that. Now, uh, as supply chain managers, which you all aspire to be, or supply chain leaders, you also need to see how those functions are performing so that if you find any issues, you can also address them. Now, to assess supply chains, there have been various methods which have been used throughout the years. Some have been very, comprehensive, detailed assessments. So, going back in time, we used to use LSAT or LIAT tools. I don't know if you've heard of them. Those tools were used to assess inventory models. They were used to assess procurement. They were also used to assess, workforce at those facilities or warehouses and stuff. So they were very basic supply chain assessment tools we used to use about 10 to 15 years ago. Then came the entire concept of very detailed assessment, going into each and every supply chain function, going into all the various enabling functions of supply chain, and that's where you see tools like NSCA, which is developed in the GHSC project through the USAID funding, and you must have heard of NSCA 2.0, which is currently one of the tools which is being used. Now, key drawback of those tools is that it takes a very long time to conduct these assessments. And sometimes what happens, by the time those assessments are over and the reports are published, some things have already changed in the supply chain. So it does not, while those assessments are helpful, sometimes their results do not really help us in understanding what is happening today. So hence another tool, another model that is currently being used by many organizations who are supporting supply chains in Africa and in other countries is based on a system called maturity model. Now, the concept of maturity model is nothing new. This is a very old concept, and it started in various sectors and has also been applied in supply chains in various supply chains of various products, whether it is FMCG, automotive, you know, chemicals or anything else. Now, in the last 4 to 5 years, we are seeing that maturity models are being used in health supply chains as well. So today, this is what we are studying that, okay, how do we, first of all, what is maturity model? What is its application in health supply chains? And through these two tools, two models, we will try to understand how they can be used. Okay. So at this point, I will invite Ogbuche to take us through the first part of the session, after which we will do a quick activity. Ogbuche, over to you.
Okay. So, okay, thank you very much, Sanjay, and thank you everyone for taking the time out for today's section. So, just as Sanjay mentioned, we'll be looking at maturity model with the focus to the health supply chain, the public health supply chain, using our context in Nigeria. So the maturity model, like you said, can be applicable across various systems. In fact, the management philosophy with the basic principle that each system has a constraint that limits its performance. And so with this in mind, we'll delve into our presentation for today. So the question here is, how does the supply chain maturity model, how does it increase performance? Because we know that the goal of every supply chain system is to make the products available for the end client. And in our case, the end clients most often are the patients who visit the service delivery point to access services. And so a supply chain is said to be performing when this end goal is met. And so we'll be looking at how this come into place, going through the theory of constraints, which says that the lowest performing element of the supply chain decreases the overall performance. So it's like there's this saying that says you're as strong as your weakest link. So most often the weakest link in a system helps to pull the others down. And what the theory of constraint, what the maturity model seeks to do is to bring this weakest link to bear, make it become visible, and then look for efforts that can be targeted at subjugating or removing these constraints. So the maturity model highlights the most problematic constraints, the weakest link, as we mentioned. If you look at the system as a bottle, you know, the neck, it's very slim, and anything that blocks the neck would prevent the flow of liquid into or outside the bottle. So this weakest link, this bottleneck, is what the maturity model seeks to address. So the supply chain maturity model helps to increase performance by, the first one has to do with focusing efforts on improving the weakest link, like we mentioned before, and then help the teams to stay on top of the dynamically shifting weakest link, because we know that as the system evolves over time, as the system matures, the weakest link also change. So the onus lies on the team now to always monitor and adapt as the things changes. The example that Sanjay gave in his initial introduction when he was talking about those assessment models that take a lot of time before the results are published. So oftentimes, maybe if something takes between 6 months or sometimes even a year, In the course of that period, the system would have changed. What you felt was the weakest link at the onset of that assessment might have changed because probably the supply chain would have evolved within the time frame that the assessment was carried out. So the onus lies on the teams now to be always be on the lookout to adjust where necessary. And supply chain maturity model also helps to highlight areas where maturity impacts the supply chain ability to function in a given market environment. Even as the supply chain matures, there are instances that would come. And so agility is very, very important here. We all remember what happened during COVID when there were supply chain issues, or in instances where you have maybe like a natural disaster or an emergency situation. We all know what happened in Bruno as well. Those have impact on the supply chain. And the more matured your supply chain is, the better you're able to handle situations like that when it comes into bear. The next slide. So a maturity model, from what we've seen, I'm sure we all have an inclination, and even from the course outline that we did in the platform, we saw that the maturity model is a framework for assessing and measuring the maturity of an organization's process. So it looks at the processes, it looks at the practices, and then it looks at the system as a whole. So maturity refers to the capacity of an organization to consistently enhance its performance in a particular area. We've all heard the concept of continuous improvement. So the idea is to ensure that you are always working towards excellence. Excellence is not necessarily a destination, but a journey. Because what you think is excellent today, by the time you look back in 2-3 years' time, you might discover that there have been some innovations that have come on board that makes that excellent performance of yesterday becomes an average or a mediocre performance today because of the way things have moved. So maturity, in defining maturity, you have to look at it that it's a capacity of an organization to consistently enhance its performance in a particular area. Maturity models also enable organizations to identify their strengths, their weakness. So it's more of like carrying out like a SWOT analysis. You look at your strength, your weakness, and then you prioritize the areas of improvement. And then you benchmark your organization or yourself against industry best practices. So benchmarking here has to look at comparing yourself with the industry best practice that exists in your particular client, or even at the global level. You look at what they are doing that you need to do to get to that level of efficiency and effectiveness. And we've mentioned that it consists a series of levels or stages. The two examples that Sanjay gave, the UNICEF model as well as the ASCM model, there are series of levels that you need to grow through to get to the highest. Both of them coincidentally have about 5 different stages. For the ASCM, you have the canvas, which is like the barest minimum. You graduate to bronze, to silver, to gold, and then to platinum, which is the accredited level. And for the UNICEF, you have the fragmented, the developing supply chain, the standardized, the enhanced, as well as the sustainable. So if you look at these two, as well as most other maturity models that are in place, the basic level often starts with some level of ad hocness, some level of fragmentation. And then over time, the processes begin to develop until it gets to the highest level, which could be sustainable or platinum, depending on the model that you are using. So maturity models also provide a set of criteria that organizations can use to assess their maturity level in a particular area. So in essence, it's more like a roadmap. It gives you an inclination of where you are, and then the things that you need to do to get to the level of effectiveness and efficiency that you desire as an organization. Next slide. So this is, okay, this is the ASCM model. with the different levels: canvas, bronze, silver, gold, and then accredited. We'll look at it more in detail. I'm sure in the study materials that we had during the course of our study, we came across this as well. There are about 20 different supply chain areas where this model assesses. And once that assessment is done, the basic is the canvas level, which gives a score of about 20 to 39%. And then the score goes up to 100%, which is for the accredited or the platinum level. And so you'll discover that this is more like a growth trajectory. You're going from canvas to bronze to silver and then to gold. There are performance indicators that you look at while working towards your growth to the accredited or to the highest level. And so each of these stages have performance indicators that you look into, that you need to focus your energy on, to more like the weakest link that we talked about. So if you identify from the performance indicators where your weakest link is, then you now put energy into that to ensure that you overcome that weakness and then move on to the next stage. So for the canvas, the key priorities are absolute basic capabilities for just providing these products. You're not looking at how efficient the system is. You just want to get the product to the client. But there are some stages, there are some processes that needs to be in place to ensure that the process is efficient, to ensure that the process is effective, so that commodity security is attained. So you find that these processes, these systems are lacking often in a canvas level, because you might not really have strong IT systems, you might not really have traceability, visibility into the system from the, say, the central medical stores, the service delivery points and all that. And so as you progress across the levels, you'll discover that the level of efficiency keeps increasing until you get to the topmost. And we say that at this topmost position, consistency is a keyword. So you need to put on continuous improvement practices to ensure that you are consistent, to ensure that commodity security is attained, such that no matter what happens, each time the clients get to the health facilities, these products are available. Next slide. So the next one basically talks about the UNICEF model. But if you look at it in terms of principle, they are all similar in the sense that the plan is to overcome this weakest link that is preventing you to be as efficient and as effective as you would want to be. So this also has 5 stages, starting from the fragmented stage, where the process is more ad hoc, basic, like you have in Canvas, for the maturity model from ASCM. Also goes to developing, to standardize, to enhance, as well as sustainable. So this sustainable level, which is the 5th level, is more like the highest level, where the process is integrated, the supply chain linkages across the programmatic as well as the supply chain areas are seamlessly linked. So there's cross-functional linkages that is seamless, that you can always ensure that these products are available. Issues of stock out, it's not really something that comes into play when you are at this level of sustainable. Cost efficiency, efficiency of the supply chain, visibility. You could just, by a tap of a button, maybe from the central medical stores or the central warehouse, have a glimpse into each and every stock keeping unit line as it moves across the chain from the national, the regional, to the state central medical stores, as well as to the service delivery points. Next slide. So now we've looked at what maturity model is all about. We've seen that there are various levels, starting from the basic often to the highest level. And we've seen that based on the theory of constraints, that what the model intends to do is to bring out this weakest link to the forefront and then develop strategies on how you can overcome this weakest link and then move over to the next level. And we've also seen that there's a progression from the weakest, from the lowest or the basic down to the most matured, which could be sustainable depending on the model you're using, or accredited or platinum, depending on the terminology you want to use, based on the model that you've used for the assessment. So this is a question of us now. We have different facilities where we are working, and even at the national level, what do you think could be said to be the weakest link in the health supply chain? And why is what you're thinking the weakest link? Looking at the various categories or supply chain functions. So this is a question. It's more of like a reflection for us. So Sanjay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thanks, Aguche. So this is where we can do a quick discussion. Now think from the perspective of the supply chains where you work. And right now, we are not thinking about collecting any data. Just think from your own experience and explain what do you think is the weakest link in your state or your organization or wherever you work. It says countries, but wherever you work. Think about it and and also tell us why do you think that it's the weakest link. So we will keep the floor open for about 10-15 minutes, and we would like to hear from some of you on what you think. And later on, then we will also look at how to collect data, whether something is a weak link or not. Okay, but right now, just think from your own experience.
We can also use the chat box as well. Let me go over the chat box and see.
Yep. Anyone
Why is
who
the
would
floor
like
so
to
quiet?
begin? Yes, I think they are thinking. You have asked a difficult
Okay.
question. Yeah, we have our usual star players, Festus and Isaac. We also have Hafsat who and Blessing. They are also quite vocal. So anyone, please unmute yourself and please think about what you think. Uh, uh, Speak about what you think is the weakest link in your supply chain. And don't worry, we are not sending this video to your boss.
You could narrow it down to a state if you think the national is too broad.
Yeah.
Or if you work in an organization that has like a spread from across region, you could also use it as a case study. Remember, there's no wrong answer. This is just for discussion.
Okay, let's wait a minute and then if there is no one to respond, then we will move forward for now. Yeah, Abu Bakr, no, Festus. Okay.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Festus.
Yes. Well, I work in an organization, and from my own understanding of the weakest link we're talking about here, or in supply chain, the supply chain is looking at the challenges where the challenges are coming from, mostly like in my organization. So I don't know which of them. Basically, they are many. There's not one that is the problem.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we can,
There
but
could be
there are
many.
definitely there are some that are really the thing that is making the supply chain not effective or not going to the gold or the platinum level. Like when I talk about that, I want to talk about like in my organization. Sorry, I'm not using an earpiece, so it may sound rowdy.
It's okay. It's okay.
In
Yeah,
my
no, it's okay. Carry on.
in my organization, we have problem with procurement and sourcing. we have a problem with inventory management and then transportation, basically. And it is affecting at the service delivery point, because from the source of where we have our products distributed to those various places, it's a problem. And as such, we are not meeting the target of delivery. You will encounter stock out sometimes, most of the times, and then in the procurement, now drifting it down and down is also limited funding. I think that is my basic thing, because there's no funding for us to be trained enough. There's no funding for them to pay or to procure the drugs as much as we needed. And then there's no funding to get to source or get transportation attended to effectively. And so if I want to pick among those 4 things I think I mentioned, then maybe I would say limited funding or insufficient budget allocation for those things is our weakest link. And if that could be addressed, we'll be able to attend to this procurement problem, inventory management problem, transportation, and all that. I don't know whether I have made any attempt. That's my submission.
Yep, that's very good, Festus.
So before Sanjay comes in, let me just throw in a point here that depending on your level, each level has a priority that you intend to attain. So you cannot just jump from canvas to 100% accreditation. So for the canvas level, there's a priority that you have in mind just to get the products to the client. So in that, you're looking at the weakest link. So that's why it's important to assess, to review and get the weakest link depending on the level where you are. So once you're able to address that, and then you now move on to the next level. The next level also has its own priorities. So for probably maybe from the canvas, by the time you get to bronze, the issue of the funding that you're talking about might not necessarily be the issue again. But you're now looking at systemic processes. How do I get these products across to this various service delivery point? Because you could have a situation where you have enough products, you have funding to buy this product, but once this product comes at the national level, are they able to get into these various regions, the various service delivery point as at when due? So in that instance, you know that funding is not your problem again. You've moved from this basic, this ad hoc or fragmented, you've gone into the next level, which has its own challenges. And then you're looking at the weakest link within that challenge. So first of all, you have to identify the level where you are. You have to identify what is your main constraint, that's the bottleneck in that level. You address it and then move to the next. Sanjay, over to you.
Yeah, no, that's correct. First of all, Festus, you've talked about various issues and you tried to understand what could be a potential cause of all these issues, and based on your um, experience and living in the system, you believe that funding is one of the key problems, and that could be very well. I mean, we're not challenging you. What Aguche was trying to say is that uh, this is what you said is a very common issue that we see everywhere, that people will come up with 10 different problems. Oh, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, without understanding whether it is actually a problem or not. Because sometimes what happens is, when you see a problem in procurement or inventory management or transportation, it may the root of that problem may be somewhere else. Just like you said, funding may be the root. And if funding is sorted, then maybe other things could also be sorted. However, in most organizations, we fail to do them systematically. Now, if I look at the chat, Farm Hafsat said that she thinks data management and visibility is the weakest link. Okay, and Ahmed is saying integration. I believe integration of the system he's thinking about from that perspective is one of the weakest link, which could be. However, what happens is that as an organization or as a system, most times we fail to analyze this systematically, and this is where maturity models comes into play. So like Ogbuche was mentioning, first of all, we need a baseline. We need to know where are we starting from. So whenever we start using any maturity model, the first time that we do it, that is the baseline, and that tells us where we are. And based on the level we are, so when we are at canvas, that means we have many issues, and you can't solve all the issues at once. So that's why we need to solve, if you're at canvas, for example, or if we look at the UNICEF maturity model, if you're at fragmented, that means from all the problems, we have to then figure out what is the weakest link. What is that process or a function? If we resolve it, then maybe we can move from canvas to the next one, which is bronze. Then once we come to bronze, then we look at, okay, we still have 6 different problems, but what is the problem which is the weakest, resolving which our supply chain becomes a bit better, and then we move on to the next level. So similarly, by doing this exercise every time, by the time you reach the level, for example, if you reach accredited, or if you reach in UNICEF, they call it what? Sustainable. So when you reach those levels, you have resolved all the problems one by one. Because if you look at all the problems that you're not solving any of them. So that's why this maturity model helps you in, uh, it gives you a magnifying lens, so to say, which magnifies the bigger issues first at any given level where you are. And as soon as you fix those, then you will see that you're moving to the next level. Then at that level, you again put the magnifying glass and you find what are those issues at this level. And so on. You keep doing this exercise every year, every couple of years, and you see that your system is improving continuously. But if you try to solve all the things at once, unfortunately, you won't be able to. So that's the reason why we use maturity model. But before we move forward, if anyone else would like to talk about their systems or any other weakest link. I saw Madam Batur, you were trying to speak probably, I don't know, or if anyone else would want to contribute before we move forward.
Can I ask? Can I
Yeah,
ask a
Festus.
question?
Yes,
Yeah.
Festus, you can ask a
Now,
question.
yes, if I understand very well now, because at every of the level, from the canvas to the bronze to the silver, gold, and then accredited, and that's the ASCM. Now, there are key performance indicators or parameters along. I mean, in those places that you are supposed to look at for that, you must have achieved at a point, right?
Absolutely.
Now,
Absolutely.
you can see you in a place where you see that you can see some things in that at the accredited. Maybe some things are effectively being done under some of the key indicators or at gold. And then you come to canvas and see that maybe some things, one basic thing is there that is not even being attended to. You see the problem that is like a prerequisite that is carrying along. In that situation, where do you fix yourself in the maturity model that you are at that point?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So when we look at maturity models, for every level, there is there are certain acceptable indicators. If those are, um, if those are met, then you can go to the next one. Then again, in the next level, for each function, you will have a set of accepted indicators. If you meet them, then you go to the next level. Now, in the slide that we showed you, we only gave you a basic overview. Over there, you can't see the indicators for each and every function. That we will see in the Excel when we do the exercise later in this session. But each function has a set of indicators for each level. So until and unless you meet them, you cannot go to the next maturity level. So that is what eventually will be the weakest link. So say there are 10 functions and your 9 functions are meeting the indicators for a level, say canvas, but one of them is not meeting. So you cannot say that your system is entirely out of canvas and going to bronze. You're still at canvas because even if one indicator is not performing, you cannot go forward because that one indicator is stopping you. You're stopping your supply chains. Okay, so it's like that. So it has to work collectively because supply chain, as you understand, it's interconnected. All your functions are interconnected. If forecasting is not working, then everything is not working. If in some place your inventory management is not working, then eventually it is affecting upstream and downstream. If procurement is not working, it is also affecting upstream and downstream. So it's not that if one function is very good, then you say, oh, we are accredited in inventory management. So it won't help anyone. You have to be accredited as a whole, as a system rather than as a function. I hope that makes sense. I think Isaac was trying to say something. Isaac, is that correct? Um, you can come back. Yeah, Isaac, you've muted yourself. Isaac?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Yes. The question first was asked has dropped a lot of things. I was only trying to say that in your summary when you were saying that the challenge could be in one remote area of the supply chain and is one causing the trouble. Perhaps like I have found in most of the government hospitals in this country, funding for the TRF has been abysmal. A critical factor, even though the money is being paid, but that account is not functioning properly. So funding start to be the weakest link to make the system functional. Thank you.
Vijay, were you able to hear the entire thing?
I think it was basically emphasizing the point about funding being one of the greatest challenge. Yes. So like just the same way Sanjay mentioned. So that means you still, if you have funding challenge as a basic issue, that means you're still in canvas. So until you address that funding challenge, you cannot move on to the next level.
Yeah, and one more thing, these maturity model assessments, so at least the ASCM one, UNICEF one, sometimes they are applied to a program, sometimes they're applied to an entity. They have different modalities, but at least the ASCM one, the way it works is we don't at once look at an entire supply chain. We look at various nodes. So, for example, we would do this, say, at your state DMA. Then we would do this again at an LMCU. Then we would do it at a service delivery point or at a regional warehouse or at a central warehouse. And we would try to assess the maturity of each of those locations as per the functions they manage, so that we know very well that what are the weakest links at each node, at each level of supply chain, rather than looking only from the top and saying, if some service delivery points are not doing well, that means your entire supply chain is bad. No, that's not the case. With these maturity models, the good thing is you can apply them at different nodes, at different supply chain levels, so that collectively you can see that, okay, maybe our supply chain upstream functions from the DMA are good, but when it goes to the service delivery points, that's where we have more challenges, and then you try to fix them. Or you can say our service delivery points are okay at this level, wherever, whatever maturity level you may be, but at this level some of the functions at DMA are not very good, so then you focus on that. So if you do only one for the whole system, that may give you some conflicting results. So that's why ideally the ASCM maturity model, if you are using that, then it should be used at different supply chain levels and then consolidated rather than doing only one. Okay, I will stop here. If there are no more responses, then I would uh, give it back to Ogbuche to take us through the next section.
Okay, so the next slide. Okay, so basically, this is more like a summary of our discussions. It's important to assess the weakest link before starting the improvement process. And so you need to know what is drawing you back. You need to know the constraints. That's referring to the theory of constraint now, to know what is that thing, so to say, that is dragging you back as you're trying to move on to the next level. So once the weakest link has been identified and assessed, you can now tailor your improvement strategies to implement this specific challenge, this specific issue that you've addressed. So if funding, those were the points that were coming up. It could be other things. Remember that the weakest link could cut across technology, could cut across financial, it could even cut across human resource. It could be that you don't have trained personnel to carry out inventory management practices as they should. So when you look at this weakest link, then you now direct your strategies, your improvement strategies towards addressing this funding or these issues that is termed to be your weakest link. So we'll be looking more in details into how this assessment is done, looking at the tool that we mentioned, that's the ASCM maturity model tool, as well as the UNICEF model tool. Next slide. Okay, so this is the ASCM model. So the maturity model, it's an online questionnaire. It's available online. So teams access the model at an online website. I think that's the link to that. And we said that it can be done across different nodes, as Sandy mentioned, at the country, regional, state level, at the district level, district, or if you have like a drug management agency, you can do it at that level. We look at the date of completion. Those are just basic indices to fill up in the form. The country, the date of completion, the name of individuals. That's the team that are carrying out, because it's not a one-man affair. You have to have different teams, because like we mentioned, it cuts across about 20 different supply chain categories. So you need to put yourself into teams. You need to look at the type of organization, the commodity type. It could be maybe an assessment of a reproductive health supply chain, malaria supply chain, or public health as a whole, or essential medicine. So you have to look at all that. The next slide. So this is the initial stage where you fill out all these forms. Can you just take it to the next slide? So we just go over there. So team answer questions in 20 supply chain categories. Most questions gauge the level of supply chain maturity. We've mentioned them before, the canvas, bronze, silver, gold, and then accredited. So it's rather faint. You might not really see it well, but what that aspect is looking at, it's...
Yeah, Shreya, can you zoom the slide? I think that's possible.
That's warehouse store visibility.
Yeah.
If you're able to zoom it, this is just some key questions that you ask. How is the product located at the warehouse? And then it gives you a series of questions, a series of answers to choose from. Is it difficult and time consuming to locate specific product within the warehouse? Is the warehouse store arranged to ease identifying the location of specific products? Do you have the ability to track inventory levels in the warehouse? Do you have an electronic warehouse management system with batch and bin tracking used to track inventory levels in the warehouse? Do you have real-time visibility? If it's not applicable, you can also indicate that it was not applicable. So you can see that the questions are very detailed. By the time you finish the assessment, it gives you an objective way of assessing the situation, giving you maybe like a score on a rating, say from a rating of 1 to 5. So if you have a warehouse where everything is manual, of course, you know that it will be difficult assessing, getting visibility into what you have. because you have to be going from shelf to shelf or from rack to rack to identify the products that are there. You go and look at the bin cards to see what is there, and then you now do some form of counting to see if what is on shelf tallies with what you have in the bin card. But if you have a WMS, WMS can quickly pull out all the various stock-keeping units that you have within the warehouse and gives you the number. And if you're able to do that, then another issue would be what you have on the shelf, what you have on the rack, do they really tally with what you have in your WMS? So you can see that there's a series of questions that you need to ask. And once you're able to answer those satisfactorily, once you're able to see that you are efficient in those processes, it gives you a higher score. Next slide. So these are the various categories, the 20 of them that the ASCM models looks at. The service delivery point, that's the visibility, the service delivery point, health facility inventory management, the health facility order management. How do they carry out their requisition? You look at the warehouse or store, the visibility into the warehouse. How are you able to see through the various stock keeping units that you have, the bin locations? Are you able to attach location to each and every SKU, or they are just arranged haphazardly? The warehouse store inventory management, the store order management. So do you do out manual ordering, or do you have a system whereby you have like maybe an API that integrates into the order managing system of the client? So using the GHSC PSM project as an example, the regional warehouses that are connected to the central medical warehouses are also connected to the logistic management, NHLMIS, which is more like the order management system. So when the health facilities place their requisition, which is congregated at the state level and then at the regional level. So for the warehouses servicing the regions, the order comes automatically, it links automatically into the WMS, the warehouse management system of the various warehouses. You could see that it helps to improve what? Effectiveness, because the order managing process becomes faster. If it were manual, it means that for a regional facility, let's say, let me use one of the ones that I'm very familiar with now. For the Gombe regional warehouses that services the Northeast as well as Plateau State. If you have about, let's say, 4,000 to 5,000 head facilities that warehouse is supposed to service, if the process were manual, you will know that the order management process is going to take a lot of time, because you're going to be getting orders from, say, Taraba State, you go through it one by one. But with this integrated electronic system, where the order comes straight from the NHLMIS into the commodity order management system of the 4PL, that's Chemonix in this instance, it integrates into the WMS of the warehouse. And so if you want to service it Taraba State, and Taraba State has about 1,400 health facilities, the orders from these 1,400 health facilities passes through the commodity order management system and then goes into the WH management system. So you discover that the order management time, it's reduced when you are comparing it to a manual process. So you look at all these processes. So there are key questions that is asked there to see if you have all those systems in place, if you have that processes in place. You also look at transportation. Do you have like a transportation management system that optimizes the delivery route in which you are supposed to take these products to the health facilities? Using the example of Taraba State. So if you're taking this product from Gombe to Taraba, do you have like an optimized route for where these products are supposed to follow? So if I have 1,200 health facilities, how many routes are these 1,200 facilities divided? Are they divided? Are the routes based on proximity to themselves? Because most times the delivery is done in a mulcron manner, such that one truck would carry product for a particular route, or you could divide the route into two, and one truck would take products for those routes. And those facilities that are within the route should have some level of proximity to themselves, so that when the product moves from the warehouse, it will go around those health facilities and deliver it. So you look at the transportation system. So there are a whole gamut of questions that are asked with relation to this. There's also expiry management. So you have a situation where products just tend to expire within the warehouse. That's to show you that probably there's an issue with what your quantification. Are you forecasting and quantifying excess products such that you are able to utilize them before the expiry date? Or in your procurement, is it that you're procuring short-dated commodities that you know you will not be able to use up before this product expires? So that's issues, those are areas where the tool looks at. Also procurement, it looks at infrastructure and assets. Assets could be your technology assets like the WMS that we're talking about, the racks that you have in your warehouse. Is your warehouse a pharma grade warehouse or just a store? Do you have racks in place? Do you have what do you call it, pallets in place? Do you store the products on the ground? So you just look at all that. Also the performance management. How well are you able to meet the order satisfaction? That's the order that is coming from the health facility. How well are you able to meet it? How well are the clients able to pick up products from the service delivery point? Is it that when you come to the service delivery point or you come to the pharmacy and he has a prescription for 10 products, you can only fill 4, and then the remaining 6 you just write OS for them to go? That's to show that your supply chain is not really performing if you're looking at it from the service delivery point. So these are key areas that the tool looks at. It also looks at the analysis, the evaluation, demand planning. This is more related to quantification. How well are you able to plan demand to know the quantities that you would use within a given time period? Your supply planning looks at your procurement, how long it would take for these products to get in country after you've placed order, after you've sent out the bids, the purchase orders and all that, and how long will this product be available to service the client. Also fund management. Do you have a sustainable financing mechanism in place to ensure that these funds will always be available to ensure that you have these products each and every time the client goes to need them? The financial management, how you manage these finances, is also a key category that the tool looks at, as well as governance. That's the governance structure, the hierarchy, the leadership, the staff training. Is there provision for continuous staff training? Is it a patient-focused supply chain? So do you intend to ensure that commodity security is met, in that each time the client come to access this product, they will be able to get this product? So these are the various categories that the tool looks at. Just like the snapshot that we got about the warehouse segment that looks at the visibility, each and every one of these 20 categories also have sub-questions that are asked. And based on the scoring of these categories, then it will determine what level you are. And also in reference to the various modes that Sanjay mentioned. So if what you are doing, the assessment, they know that you're assessing it's the service delivery point. And of course, you know that some places, some of this categorization, some of these categories would be not applicable. And so you tick non-applicable. And when you tick non-applicable in your scoring, it will not be scored based on that, because those particular aspects were not applicable to your node or to your service delivery point. Next slide. So this is also another snapshot that looks at the various category models. It's also looking very vain, but this is a question on warehouse store inventory management. So let me just look at one question that is asked here. It said, at the store or the warehouse level, there is a defined amount of inventory of each product that should be maintained based on demand. These levels are not fixed and should be updated on a regular basis. As maturing increases, the policy is to maintain what? Appropriate stocking level. So objective here is to standardize inventory handling practices at the warehouse or store to ensure optimal levels of inventory are available. So we just look at one or two questions that are asked here. One says, how does the warehouse or store define the optimal level of inventory to maintain? So there are options for you to choose. Is it an ad hoc, or do you have like some form of calculation to determine your optimum level? Is it like a min-max inventory system? So all those questions are asked to just gauge your level of maturity in that regard. How is the current physical count of inventory in the warehouse determined? So there are options for you to choose. One of them could be no method to determine inventory physical count, random audits to determine inventory physical count, inventory policy used to determine inventory physical count. And what does that mean? That means you have an inventory policy that stipulates that you have what, maybe use an ABC system, or you carry inventory stock count at the end of every month, depending on how large your facility is. Is it regular, at least quarterly, or monthly, or bi-monthly, as the case may be? Frequency of inventory physical count, dynamically determined by what? The WMS. So in carrying out the inventory, what you have in the WMS, the warehouse management system, does it tally with what you have in the racks at the various bin location? So those are questions that are asked at the detailed level. There's another category that talks about location. This subsection now talks about what? Location of the inventory. Let me just try and zoom and see. One of the questions says, how are facility orders processed at the warehouse? Choose those that are applicable. Difficult to process facility orders. Ability to get facility orders to warehouses. Establish frequency to review and process order. Visual replenishment system. Orders are created and processed immediately upon request for product from service delivery or other warehouse stores. So these are categorizations of questions that are asked. And eventually, as you go ahead answering these questions from all these various categories, a score is given. And once this whole process is done and the various scores are categories and the scores are collated, you now determine the score or the level for which your particular node is. Next slide. So back to the nodes that we're talking about. So the overall supply chain and each category is scored for percentage of process maturity based on the average of questions that you answer. And so that's where the scoring comes into place. So if at the end of the day, your scoring comes up to between 20 to 39%, it means you're at the canvas level. If it comes between 40 to 59, it means you are bronze. If it comes between 60 to 79, is silver. 80 to 99% is gold, and then 100%. That means getting accredited or getting to the platinum level is more like all or nothing. Is either you are there or not. So if all questions in a category are answered, not applicable, or don't know, no score is assigned to that category. So getting back to that part, those notes that we talked about. So if some of the questions are not applicable to the node or to your areas of functionality, then you will not be scored in those areas. So investing where a component is already strong is unlikely to result to better performance. It makes sense. So where you know you are meeting the KPIs, you are meeting all the performance indices, there's no point throwing in more money there. But your efforts should be concentrated more on your weakest link and areas where you need to improve performance to increase your score, so to say. So increasing performance can be achieved by investing in the weakest areas of individual supply chains. Each category has a visual that identifies maturity by question. Where constraints exist, investing to remove those constraints may improve the entire supply chain. So the constraints, like we mentioned, there are limitations that prevent you from attaining the level of effectiveness or efficiency that you desire per category. And so when these constraints are removed, so to say, then the tendency for the supply chain performance to improve, the tendency for your level to improve, it's very, very high. Next slide. So that's all about the ASCM maturity model. This next slide just gives some visuals into the UNICEF model, which looks at the various categories. Unlike the ASCM, they have the various categories. That's from what you call it, fragmented, developing, standardized, enhanced, to the highest, which is what the sustainable. So the UNICEF models looks at your operations across the various functional area: forecasting, budgeting and planning, procurement, import and clearance of the goods at the country national level, product quality inspection, storage and distribution, end user monitoring, and the monitoring and evaluation. So these areas of operation are the activities and the processes along the supply chain, including the upstream, the midstream, and then the downstream. For context, as you move closer, downstream is closer to the client, closer to the patient. So the service delivery points are the downstream. The upstream for your supply chain at the national level will be things that has to do with demand forecasting, quantification, national level quantification, as well as procurement, in-country clearance and all that. Those are more like upstream. Then as you move towards the clients, you're going from the upstream to the midstream as well as the downstream. And then you have some enablers that are needed to manage and run the supply chain effectively. So what are these enablers? The supply chain workforce development. Do you have a plan in place to routinely train your staff on best practices in inventory management, best practices in procurement and all that? That's to up their skills, so to say. Data analytics, because you need data analytics tools, you need to analyze this data to be able to come up with sound decisions that would help to optimize your supply chain. Network optimization. The supply chains have various nodes that we talked about. These functional areas, these operation areas, are they working in silos or are they integrated? Do you have the financing and the resources necessarily to procure this product, as well as to handle all the supply chain functional, that's the cost that is associated with running the supply chain? Do you have enabling environment? That's legislation and regulation, as well as policies that will help to ensure that the strategy that you put in place, that will help to ensure that your supply chain functions optimally. So basically, this is what the UNICEF model looks at: the operational area, as well as the enablers that would help this supply chain to function what? Optimally. I think the next slide, it's more of like an exercise that we'll all carry out. So I'll hand over to Sanjay on this. Over.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Ogbuche. So, see, what Ogbuche has done so far is given you a snapshot of both the tools, the ASCM maturity model tool and the UNICEF maturity model tool, which they call the supply chain rainbow. Because if you go back one slide, the UNICEF maturity model graphic, it looks like a rainbow. So they call it a supply chain rainbow as well. Now, what we will do now in the next 15-20 minutes, we will look into the ASCM maturity model Excel tool. The reason being, so Shrey, you can stop sharing. Let me share my screen now. You have to enable sharing as well. Sorry, it's disabled.
Yeah, now please.
Yeah, okay. Okay, excellent. Now, the ASCM tool is available in two methods. One is an online version. Some screenshots were there on the slide. Unfortunately, for some reason, the online assessment version is offline. I'm not really sure why, but I hope it should be available shortly. I mean, I will try to write to ASM to see what's the issue, but it may take some time. But anyways, there is an Excel format as well, which you can use, and you can use in your workplace as well. So this tool, this Excel, you can use anywhere. So what you have to do is first, if you see on the screen, you have to fill out some basic details like which country, district, who are the team members who are completing it, what type of organization. You can also indicate the kind of commodities you supply, for example. You can add more if you want. And you can also write which node of supply chain you are assessing. So you will see here, just like Ogwushe has mentioned, you can assess national, you can assess state, you can assess county. County in this case would probably not be applicable in Nigeria, but you
Local
can do
government. Mm.
sorry.
So we call it local government.
Yeah, but that would be, I guess, even below sub county, no, or a community.
Mhm.
So generally, county is like a I mean, there are different ways. In some countries, county is state. In some countries, county is between state and local government. So it's different, So that's why they have added everything.
Mhm.
I think from the Nigerian context, sub county would be a local government area. County could be like a warehouse, like a regional warehouse, if you have within state, that you can use as a county, or you can also assess a site, which is like a service delivery point. Then you can also say whether this assessment has been done previously or not, and what is the source of information, whether it is experience or you're using some information system or whatever. Okay. So once that is done, then there are these 20 categories, which Ogwuche explained earlier. So those categories are listed one after the other. So category one, category two, category three, and so on and so forth. Then under each category, you will see that first there is an explanation. So what is the explanation of that category? It is also mentioned. And what is the objective of that category? It is also mentioned. That what is the objective with respect to having supply chain maturity? That's also given. Then there are some questions or statements. Okay. So like in this category, there are three questions. And then you have to select whatever is best applicable to your situation. And you have all these possible responses, from this to this. And whichever response you select, it eventually means that you are at a certain level. So if it is limited visibility, then it means you are at canvas. If there is some visibility and consumption data available at monthly level, then about bronze. If you go beyond, then silver, and then gold and accredited. Okay. So similarly for each question, I'm sorry, for each question, there are these options given for you to choose. And whichever option you choose, that means you are at that level for that particular question. And then eventually, once you average it out, then it will tell you uh, what is your overall maturity. Okay, for overall maturity for all the 20 or for all the categories that is relevant to the level you are assessing. So this is how you use this Excel. The Excel, which we used to the earlier version of this Excel. This is version 8. When I was in Nigeria, we were using, I think, version 5. In version 5, there used to be a automated dashboard, which used to be populated once you finish the Excel. What ASCM did was take that dashboard from Excel and put it online, which we showed you in one of the slides. Now, unfortunately, today that thing is not working, but it may work in a few days' time, probably. So, but even then, you can use this Excel and try to take average of where you are, and then you can try to figure out what are some of your weakest, weakest links. Now, in this exercise right now, what we can do is we can look at some of these categories like warehouse visibility, warehouse inventory management, transportation, procurement, demand planning, financial management, and governance. So let me first go to warehouse visibility. Yeah, warehouse visibility. So what we can do is very quickly do a very basic analysis. I can ask these questions. For example, how is product located at the warehouse? So anyone who works at a warehouse, let me change the, yeah. So anyone who works at a warehouse, you can say what is more applicable to your warehouse as per these five options on screen, and that will be your response. Okay. Similarly, the next question is describe the ability to identify order status within the warehouse or store. Choose anyone. So identifying order status. So if you have a system which using which you can identify an order status, we can then select the most relevant answer. So if someone wants to do this exercise quickly for a few categories so that you can understand how this exercise is done, please raise your hand or unmute yourself, and then we can go through some of the questions. So who would want to do that? Anyone works at a warehouse or a store? Anyone? Or do you want me to select any other category which is more appropriate for you? So if um, there are other categories as well. So for example, I'm just putting all the categories on chat, which we could check. So let me know if anyone who would like to see, would like to do any other category as an example. Yeah, anyone? No, no one wants to do it. Um, okay, I mean that's totally your choice. I know the ideal situation was if that okay, someone is on chat. Isaac is saying procurement. Okay, so let's go to procurement, and then Isaac, you can come online. So the first question is, how long does it take to procure product? Purchase order to an purchase order under an existing contract. So to issue a purchase order, for example, so how long does it take? So it takes more than a month, less than a month, can be executed in less than 2 weeks, 1 week, can be executed in less than a week. Now, this is talking about a purchase order. It's not talking about a full procurement. Huh? So, how does it take to issue a purchase order and get it finalized by a supplier? Isaac? Isaac?
I said about a month.
About a month
Yeah,
or about a month, you said? Okay, so that means we can say less than a month. Okay, so let me highlight it in a different color. Let me use green. The next question is, how is the procurement quantity determined? So no standard process to determine quantity. Procurement quantity is based on count of existing supply or stockouts. Procurement quantity is based on beneficiary consumption. Procurement quantity is based on a supply plan, which probably is developed on a periodic basis. And procurement quantity is based on current system inventory levels and real-time demand forecasts. So which one do you think, Isaac?
consumption.
Consumption. Okay, this one.
Usually consumption.
Okay. Then the next question is, what is the typical frequency for the procurement of product? So now this is talking about broader procurement frequency. So semi-annually or less frequently, quarterly, monthly, weekly, as needed.
Quarter,
Quarterly.
quarterly,
Okay.
quarterly.
Okay. So now see this one. If you look at the objective, it says as if we procure as quickly as possible, that means that we are able to satisfy our demand. That means our inventory is moving properly. So the goal is to have quick procurement turnaround. Okay. However, in public procurement, broader procurement, bigger procurement may take time. So in this scenario, you have to think about more about purchase ordering and purchasing. So even if we look at basic responses from Isaac, we see that two questions are at bronze and one is at silver. So we can say more or less the system that Isaac is talking about is more or less at about bronze. And as more efficiency can be built in so that purchasing can be done faster, the system that Isaac is in can move towards silver and probably towards gold. uh, Purchasing in less than a week might be too difficult in an NGO or a public system. In private sector, it is still possible, but of course, this tool was created keeping private sector standards in mind. So we may not have to achieve accredited, but even if we achieve gold, or to some extent something between gold and silver, that might mean that our public systems or NGO systems are working very well. Yeah. Anyone else who would want to do any other category? Thank you so much, Isaac. Anyone else who would like to do? Okay, there is something on chat. Inventory management. Okay. And let's see where is inventory management. Uh, I think it should be above. Yeah, I think this one. Yeah, inventory management. I think this is it. Let me check. Resume. Okay, inventory management at Ahmed, inventory management at what level? Because there is an inventory management for service delivery point or health facility, and then there is an inventory management for warehouse. So depending on
Can we go
which
for
one
facility level? Facility.
facility level. Okay, so let's do that. So there are two questions only. The first is how are inventory levels within facilities established? So there is no process. The staff reacts to depleted inventory and stockouts and hence, replenishes the inventory. There is a policy or a guideline in place to inform how much inventory should be kept. There is inventory segmentation policies based on which there are certain specific stocking levels and it is done monthly. Or there is a dynamic segmentation, which means in this, the final one is more electronic, where there is some kind of an electronic tool so that stock levels can be monitored, checked, and in some cases replenished daily as well. So this is like Amazon, for example. They do daily. So you can think which one is more closer to the situation where you are in, Ahmed.
Okay, we use the min-max system to help our decision in requisition.
And
Min-max system
and what frequency? What is the frequency of ordering or replenishment?
bi-monthly, bi-monthly,
Monthly. Okay.
bi-monthly.
So that means you have and are there any segmentation done or is it just min max for all products?
I think min-max for all products, for all.
So there is then we can say that there is policy and guideline in place to inform how much inventory should be kept in the facility. So this should be the ideal
Yes,
option, which is under
yes.
uh, 1, 2, 3 at around silver. Then number two question is how frequently are physical stock counts conducted? So no stock counts, they're very random, there is no structure. Regular stock counts conducted physically at least quarterly, monthly, and physical stock counts are determined by the electronic system. Okay, so Ahmed, which one is more closer to your reality?
Stock count is done monthly,
Monthly.
end of
Okay,
the month.
so physical, not basic electronic or stock
Yeah,
count,
it's
but
physical,
physical.
not electronic.
Physical.
Physical.
Okay, all right. So then, Ahmed, whichever health facility you are in, on this parameter, you are quite advanced because one is in silver, one is at gold. So your inventory management policies at health facility, basic, the two major issues, which is about calculating stock levels and replenishment and then stock counts, they are at very good. at good performance. And similarly, there is also order management if you want to do, because it's these things are together. So Ahmed, can you do order management as well?
Yes, go ahead, Sanjay.
Okay. So how do the facility determine the need to order? So there is no process, there is only manual or visual. So when something looks like it is going to finish, then the orders are placed. Or there is a policy guideline based on which orders are placed. There are digital order management system, or a process to digitize within 1 day. So there is uh, this means that either there is a digital system, entirely digital, or you create an order and then you put it on a system. Okay. Or the final one is it is created on demand through consumption, and it is done directly through an electronic inventory management system. So which one is it, Ahmed?
Currently, we don't have an ERP, so we have a guideline, an SOP that guide us in
Hmm.
emergency order. Yes.
Okay. And so that's an emergency order, but what is in general process?
In general process, we 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 also bi-monthly we do utilize the NHLMIS to enter
Mm-hmm.
our reports, and it's a combined request and requisition. So bi-monthly, when you
Hmm.
enter bi-monthly, you get your supply. So
Okay.
there's no any electronic system apart from the
Okay.
NHLMIS.
Okay. So I think there are these policies and SOPs in place based on which you do the order. It's not ad hoc. It's based on a system of min max that you said before. And then on a monthly basis, depending on where our stock levels are, you will order those stocks either through the national one or through emergency. Is that correct?
Yes, Sanjay, that's true. That's
Okay, so
true.
that means this is the closest option possible based on this tool. The next question is how is the order quantity determined? So no process, visual review, automated ordering, based on inventory management strategy, which in case for you is min-max. Automated ordering that accounts for orders already placed but not received. It also, so if you also factor in that, and then the last one is of course digital, which is connected to the overall demand and consumption, and based on that, it decides how much to order. So which one do you think is the closest, Ahmed?
I don't know, but when I explain, maybe you put it at the right place. We utilize the NHLMIS, which is
Mm-hmm.
integrated into the one comes by Global Health Supply Chain. So I think it's
Mm-hmm.
automated. Yeah, when you enter your
Mm-hmm.
report, your order quantity is automated and it's integrated
Mm,
into the order system, M Supply,
mm.
NHLMIS, and
Okay.
and yeah.
So it should be somewhere then between these two. So because I don't know how exactly it is done, but I think between 4 and 5, between gold and accredited, I would select
I
both
think
of them
can be
because
four. We
we,
can
we don't
comfortably
know.
place at four.
Yeah,
Four maybe.
okay.
Yeah.
So let's do it at 4. But it may be a bit more advanced because you see, this is a drawback of any maturity model tool, because sometimes our reality is between the lines. So a better alternative always is to select one level lower, so that we know that there is a scope of improvement if we see there are any issues. Because if you always select the one level higher, then we will see no scope of improvement even if there are any weaknesses. Okay. The last
Yes,
question
thank
is
you.
how are orders checked against budget, or any other thing? So there are orders are not checked. Budget constraints are sometimes recognized. It can affect ordering. Order amount authorized by those with budget information. So you create the order, but then someone else approves it. Order amount considers the facility's budget. So your facility already has a budget line. So whatever you put in, if the facility has that budget, then it is accepted or it is not, or it is done automatically through the electronic system which is there. So which one is it?
Uh, I think the order amount is determined by the consumption and the stock at hand that you enter into the NHLMIS. So it's been
Okay.
automated. Your stock at hand and your consumption and adjustment determine your quantity to order. since basically we will deal with free commodities. We don't procure. They are
Oh, okay.
basically free supply. Yes,
Okay.
yes,
So
yes,
you're talking more from the perspective of the donor-funded commodities. Yeah.
yes, sir.
So in
Yes.
that case, this would be not applicable. So these are some questions where you have to understand that some questions can be not applicable, and then you have to write not applicable in that case. Okay. So, but if you see, even in this case, both on inventory management and order management, the health facility where you work, Ahmed, for donor funded commodities, you are fairly uh, good in terms of your maturity of the facility in inventory management and order management. So this is how, when we start doing for each and every function, we can see where we are, and then we can take some corrective actions as well. Now, of course, when you use the digital tool, it gives you a bit more flexibility and gives you a bit more analysis. The Excel one is more to do like in a workshop, and then take the data and then analyze it separately. But at least you get a fair idea that how this kind of a maturity model tool works. And all maturity model tools are generally like this. You would have a category. Under that category, there will be multiple questions. For each questions, there would be certain possible responses. You have to think about what is the closest response to your situation, and then you select it. And then once you have selected all the responses, then you can take an average and see which level you are. And then once you do the entire thing, then you can see which are those categories or functions which are the weakest. So when we do, for example, if we do all the 20 categories, then we will see that there are some which are probably in in column D, which is your canvas, or some who are at column E, which is bronze. So then we know that if our most of our functions are at silver, and then some of them are at canvas, that means they are the ones they need to be fixed first, rather than fixing, or rather than advancing something which is already doing okay, because the ones which is at canvas is kind of holding you back. So if you fix that one first, then everything else automatically may start getting more advanced without even any dedicated intervention. So this is the utilization. This is how you utilize maturity models. I mean, this was just an example from a learning purpose. But if, as an organization, you or individual, you can write to ASCM. You can ask them to support you in organizing this study properly. And they are funded by Gates Foundation, so they should be able to help you in this as well. But at this point, Shreya, if you can show the slides again. Let's take a couple of questions if there are, or otherwise there are a few slides which I would request Ogbuche to finish. Ogbuche, back to you.
Okay. So I think while we're having that initial discussion, some questions arose with regards to how do you know the weakest link, so to say, among competing issues that you have with your supply chain. So this slide basically talks about how we need to prioritize and manage the process. So prioritizing critical processes with significant impact and allocate resources and efforts accordingly. So prioritizing help us to look at the critical processes that will have significant impact on our supply chain. And in so doing, you allocate the necessary level of resources to help to checkmate those constraints. Remember earlier on, we mentioned that if you have some categories where you're doing well, it doesn't make sense to throw more money at it, so to say. So rather, your efforts in terms of resources, in terms of capacity, should be tailored towards the areas where you have the weakest link, the areas that have the greatest impact of drawing down your score, so to say. or drawing down the performance of your supply chain. Prioritizing also helps to create a continuous improvement program to identify and eliminate inefficiencies in supply chain. So if you have a continuous improvement processes like a CQI processes, so you're continuously monitoring. Remember, we said that the weakest link could be dynamic in the sense that what you tempt to be your weakest link today might no longer be the weakest link tomorrow. So instituting a CQI process, a continuous quality improvement program in place would help you to always monitor and adapt as necessary. You also prioritize to develop a risk management plan to mitigate risks that can impact the supply chain, such as transportation disruption or supplier delays. So those are mitigation plans that you need to put in place to guard against risk that will cause disruptions in your supply chains. So basically, these are key things to look at when you want to prioritize with regards to assessing or determining your weakest link, and as well as delivering or directing resources towards addressing those weak links and constraints. Next slide. So standardization and technology. So standardizing the maturity model for assessing and monitoring supply chain maturity can help to institutionalize it effectively. What do we mean by standardizing? In standardizing it, you are trying to say that this is more like a policy or something that it's done when it's supposed to be done, something that it's standard across the various levels, such that the various nodes that we talked about, you having the templates that you apply across the whole nodes of the supply chain, from the national to the state to the regional, as the case may be. Implementing appropriate technology can streamline operations, lower costs, and enhance supply chain visibility. We talked about it, like the example I gave with the warehouse reference, where you have a WMS that is integrated with a commodity order management system of the client. In so doing, we are helping to streamline or even make the process more effective and efficient, in the sense that what would have taken you 5-6 days to do before, but with the introduction of technology, you can do it in, say, 2 days or even same day, because of the speed that comes with the use of technology. Collaboration is also very, very important, as well as capacity building, because you need to continuously build the capacity of your skill set, of your supply chain personnel. So developing the skills and knowledge of supply chain personnel can empower individuals to perform self-assessment and improve understanding of processes and technology. So once their skill set is developed, they can, on their own, carry out self-assessment. And in doing that self-assessment, they're able to determine the weakest link in their own sphere, in their own node, and develop strategies that will also help to increase those or to do away with the weak links. Encouraging collaboration between internal department and external stakeholders, including suppliers, logistic providers, and end users, can also enhance quality and service. So collaborative planning, this is the thing that is done most often in the, what do you call it, fast-moving consumer goods, where they carry out their planning and quantification in collaboration with their suppliers. Sometimes the more developed systems even have visibility into their supplier system, such that they're able to get this product as at when due. Because you know that demand, especially for fast-moving consumer goods, it's not static. And so as the demand changes or shifts, this visibility enables them to collaborate more effectively, so as to ensure that these products are available as at when due. Next slide.
I think that's it.
Okay, basically, this is just an overview of what the maturity models does, and how prioritizing as well as collaborating with the various stakeholders can help to improve the process. Over.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ogbuche. I see, like you said, this is this session was more for you to understand how to assess supply chains, and that there are some tools available using which you yourself can do assessments of wherever you work. You don't have to approach someone to do a big research and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to create a team. You can simply get this basic tool, and do a quick analysis so that you can understand what are some of the things which are not working, and then focus on them. Okay. As you grow up into positions where you are managing or leading supply chains, these things become very important for you to have visibility on what is not working, and hence putting more energy and focus into strengthening those areas. Because sometimes what happens is we keep on strengthening the areas which are working well, and then saying, oh, but the supply chain is not doing so well, but we keep on putting money on strengthening, but we are strengthening the areas which are already strengthened. So focus on the areas which are not strengthened. Okay. So this was a basic overview. If you have any questions, quick ones, please let us know. Otherwise, the recording, the slides, the Excel, all will be shared with you, and you can finish the CLC2 in the next few weeks. There will be a community event, I think next week or the week after, between Shreya and Muskan. They will send you the program for that as well. I hope you attend that as well, and you have a good discussion in the community event as well. So yeah, that's great. We have finished the technical sessions for CLC2. I would like to uh, appreciate Ogbuche's time as well. Ogbuche, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with everyone. We are on WhatsApp, emails, so anytime you have any issues, please do not hesitate to reach out. So thank you so much, and thank you so much, Shreya, for hosting this. We will make sure that no one is facing any issues, and if you are, then please do reach out to us. And with that, I wish you a great weekend, and I hope everyone will be able to finish this course as well. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Sanjay.
Ogbuche.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.